Hi everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. I also have a podcast where each week I cover another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be going over quite a bit. There were some updates to Cinema 4D involving the phong tag and normals. And there's a new tool inside of Cinema 4D called the normal tag and normal editing, the normal editing manager. So we're going to go through what these are and how they work and some of the new updates to the phong tag as well. This can help you create low poly models that look great and have the correct shading when rendering. You can also transfer these normals from one object to another, which can be really helpful as well. So let's go ahead and jump into Cinema 4D and talk about this and how it works in these new updates. So here we are inside of Cinema 4D, and sometimes the best way to show how a tool works is just on your classic primitive sphere. So I'm going to hold a click on our cube here and grab a sphere and drop it into our scene. So first, to start off with, let's go ahead and turn on our quick shading lines. Or we could even use garage shading lines in this case. And you'll notice something. You'll notice that although there's all these polygons and all these facets on this sphere, it is completely smooth. The shading looks smooth. Despite that, it doesn't look like a disco ball, which when you think of all these facets, it would make sense for your object to look like a disco ball. So what is preventing that from happening? Well, it is your phong tag, and I have a whole other episode on the phong tag where we covered what angle limit is, what phong angle is, and edge breaks are, but you'll notice there's this new setting here called style. And not only that, if I make this sphere editable, you'll see that there's even a new option in here. So you can do that by clicking this button here or by hitting the C hotkey. So I'll go ahead and hit the C hotkey, and now we'll go back into our phong tag, which is automatically added to our sphere. You'll see we have this new option now that this model is editable and we can adjust its edges and points. We can create a normal tag now. And this normal tag gives you more options, and it actually overrides this original phong tag. But before we dive into that, I just want to review what the phong tag does. So, phong angle, what does it do? It takes the averages of the normal directions of the polygons on your model and uses that to create the shading. And you can choose at what point does that angle deviation become shaded or not become shaded. So the lower this angle threshold here, the more the sphere will look like a disco ball, and it won't have that nice even shading between these edges. And you might even be able to see that more if I turn off the lines and I just keep on garage shading. With the phong angle at 0, it looks like a disco ball. We can see all those edges. When you increase this, Cinema 4D is using those normal directions of the polygons to smooth this out. So what exactly is the normal direction of a polygon, or a vertex for that point? Well, it helps you visualize it if you turn it on within your display. So within our options, you'll see we have polygon normals listed here and vertex normals. If we turn on polygon normals and we select our sphere, and we select our polygons, you can see that we have these lines all pointing out of these polygons. Those lines are showing what your normal direction is for this sphere, and it's using that angle that is perpendicular to that polygon to create that normal direction, and it's using that angle in order to calculate the phong shading on this sphere. So that's the math that is happening behind what you are seeing on your screen right now. Not only do the polygons have normals, if we go into our options here, you can see we can also preview our vertex normals. So you can see that these are all our vertex normals, these white lines here at the vertices of each polygon. So that is what we are seeing. And that is what is contributing to how we calculate this phong tag and what this phong angle actually means. Now, we've also covered edge breaks, and I'll just briefly talk about what this is. This is the older way of how we used to adjust our models and or normals and our phong shading within Cinema 4D. You can still use it, there's nothing wrong with it, but now we have a new way to do it with this normal tag. But just so that you know the old way, let's go ahead and use the UL hotkey for loop selection, and we're going to select a loop here and a loop here. And I have a whole other episode on this. If I use any tools that you haven't heard of, I'll leave a link to them in the description below so that you can learn all about what they do. And I'll go over to our mesh menu here. And under the normals menu, you'll see all of these tools here that we've actually covered in the past. So if you want to know any of these, like align normals, reverse normals, you can definitely learn those, and I'll leave the link to those as well. But you'll see we have break phong shading here and unbreak phong shading and select broken phong edges. So this used to be the main way you'd adjust your normals. Now there's a new way you can do it as well. So if I choose break phong shading and click away here, you can see that our sphere doesn't have as smooth of shading along these two edges that I had selected and created that break phong shading. So it's not as smooth of a transition, and we can see that a little bit more. And you can use that to create shading on your models with less polygons. So you're able to have a model look smooth with fewer polygons, and you're also able to choose where you want it to look less smooth and like it has a facet using these tools without adding extra geometry to your model. So this is how things are rendered and calculated. And you'll see we have more options here. So for right now, I'm going to hit undo so that we have our sphere back to how it was at the beginning before we added in those edge breaks. I just want you to know what those were. You can also adjust these with a normal tag. The uniform option here is the way that Cinema 4D has always calculated phong angles, but now you have additional options. So this menu here is new. You have uniform, the original way it's always been done, which takes the averages of the normals to calculate your phong shading. You have angle weighted, which takes into account the angles of polygons and edges while adjusting the phong shading, and this is best for triangulated models or models made up of triangles. You have area weighted. This option is great for working with models that have quads in them or models that have bevels in them. It takes into account larger surfaces of your mesh that may have one normal direction and smaller areas that may have a different normal direction. So that's what makes it really good at calculating models that may have bubbles to them. For example, and just so that you know what I'm talking about when I say bevels, sometimes they're also called fillets, but if we add in a cube over here and we have our cube, you turn on fillets and you can see these rounded edges over here. That's what it's referring to. And area weighted tends to be better at making those bevels look good. Did you see that difference there? From the old way it used to calculate the phong to the new way with area weighted, it just makes those bevels pop and look a little bit nicer. You also have this option here called angle and area weighted. This is a combination of the two that we went over above. It's best for triangulated models that may have some bevels. We have this other option here that is square area weighted. This option and how it calculates phong is good for models with n-gons. Now, if you've watched my podcast for a while, you know that I prefer to not have n-gons in my model. You may be able to find an exception for it, but I prefer to avoid them. But if you are choosing one of these options and you have a model that has n-gons in it, this is a pretty good option for it. So let's go ahead and go over to our sphere again, because we need to talk about this normal tag, this famous normal tag that is what really brought us here to begin with. So let's click this button here finally and see what's happening. So now we have this normal tag and it is overriding the original phong tag that we had. We are no longer using that phong tag. It's no longer really what's affecting our model. Our normal tag is affecting our model. And you can see your normal tag settings within your attribute manager when it's selected. There's also another manager you should be aware of if you are using this normal tag. And you'll be able to find that within your mesh menu under normals. And then you can click normal editing. And it will bring up the normal editing manager. You can pin it in place by clicking this pin here. And you can choose what coordinate system you would like to use while adjusting the normal direction. So you could use the world coordinates, and you can see that the world coordinates are right here shown at the origin. Y is going up, Z is going this direction, and X is going this way. We also have object coordinates like the one for our sphere. You can see our sphere has an axis, and right now it's pretty much lining up with the world coordinates, but if we were to rotate this around, you can see that the world coordinates and the object coordinates are different. So you get to choose which ones you are using while adjusting these values in here to adjust the normal directions. So I'm going to hit undo, just so you're aware that's there, and we'll go through some other settings. Strength affects the strength of this tool. You can adjust the angles of the normals in increments if you would like by reducing this. If you reduce this to 10%, it will adjust it by 10% each time you click a line. You can bring it up to 100%, and whatever values you put within the direction for that normal, it will adjust it 100%. So you have some control over that. And this tool will adjust the normals in point mode, edge mode, and polygon mode. So you can work in any one of these modes to adjust your normals. Now we have two options on how we adjust them. So I'm going to go ahead and select these polygons here. We can change the normals of these polygons to the positive X direction and hit align. Now it's changed those vertex normals all to be facing the positive Z or the positive X direction. You can see that they're all facing the positive X direction, which is this way, the same way as this arrow here, and the same way here. So you can adjust it this way by choosing one of these here, and you can see that the shading has also changed for the model. It's all one color because it's using the normal direction to calculate the shading. So you'll see it changes if I were to choose positive Y and click align. Now you can see that the shading has changed. And it's using the default light of our scene in order to determine that value that we are seeing on our object when it comes to shading. We can just click through these and you can see how they are moving the normals. So it's affecting the vertex normals. You can also choose something custom. So custom, you'd be using these options here. This is your X, this is your Y, and this is your Z. If we were to change the Y to 1 and this to 0 and hit align, you can see these are all going up because they're going 100% in the Y direction, which is represented by 1. Now you can also choose to have it only be 0.5, so that would be 50% in the Y direction. Or you could choose to have this one be 0.5 and then hit align again, and you can see now they're all facing that direction. So that's how you can adjust those there. Now we've really messed up the normals of the sphere just to show you what those settings do. So what if we want them to go back to how they were? Well, we can go ahead and select soft, and that'll just smooth everything out again. It'll make those nice smooth shading transitions that we saw before at the beginning. And this is much smoother. And you can see our normals are all pretty much going in the average direction of each other. And let's talk a little bit about what smooth and hard actually mean, or soft and hard actually mean in this instance. And I think that's a little bit easier to show on a cube than a sphere. So I'm going to drop another cube into our scene. And let's talk about this cube. I'll make this cube editable. We're going to give it a normal tag. And you can see these vertex normals. They are all spread out. And we're getting this hard shading in between the polygons. So what if I were to click on this vertex right here? And instead of having this hard shading, we want to have it be soft like a sphere. We can click soft here and you can see that all the normals are coming together in one line instead of going different directions for the vertices here. So that is smoothing out the shading. When you see them coming together as one line, there's going to be hard shading when you can see the vertices have normals going different directions. That is how you can understand what these two do. You can think of the hard shading as what would be on a disco ball. And the soft shading as of what would be on a bouncy ball. So that gives you an idea. And just so that you're aware of, you can also choose to turn on and off whether if you preview your polygon normals here and your vertex normals here. So I turned those off for a second just so that you could see that shading change. You'll also see this option here. So if I were to select a specific polygon here, and I only wanted to see the normal directions for this polygon, I could choose selected only for our polygon normals. Now we only see our polygon normals for this polygon. We can choose selected only for our vertex normals, and now we can only see our vertex normals on this polygon. So that gives you an idea of how that works. I'm going to change these back to being soft. Just make sure that all the polygons on here are set to soft. I believe that I did do that, and they are. I also want to go over what this distance and average is. So you can set a distance, and it will take into account the surrounding normals of what you have selected within that distance, and use that to find the average and use that to affect the normals. I'm going to turn off selected only so that we can see all of these once again. We have these other options here, X, Y, and Z, and this button reverse. So you can reverse the directions here by clicking this button, and you can choose a specific axis. So we can reverse the Y axis and click the button there, and now you can see it's changed the angle of those normals, and it's reversed in the Y direction. So that is another option here, and we went through these. Now let's say we have another sphere right over here. I'm going to hide our cube. So now we just have these two spheres. This sphere is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to turn on our garage shading lines. This sphere is going to be low poly. I'm going to click C so that this changes how it looks. I'm going to change this to have hard shading between those edges. And our first sphere, I'm going to change to have soft shading. So you can see these look pretty different. What if we wanted to transfer the normals from this sphere to this sphere, even though they look quite a bit different? We can do that. And we can actually do that using another tool. Within our character menu over here, we have a manager called the Vamp Manager. So you can transfer normals from one object to another, even if they look a little bit different. So our source, the one we're transferring normals from, would be this first sphere. So I'll drag and drop this in here, and our second sphere over here, I'm going to drag and drop this within our target, the one we change. And I'm going to check on this box-haired normals. Now you can see that this tool can be used for a lot of different things. When it comes to characters mainly is what this was designed for. But you can transfer over joint weights, your morphs, your selection edges, selection polygons, vertex colors, material tags, normals, selection points, UVs, vertex maps. There's so much you can transfer over. So if we click transfer maps, you can see now this has soft shading, a lot like the sphere. So that's just a useful tool to be aware of, especially if you need to transfer over normals from one object to another that you want to have the same normals. That is one way to do it. Maybe you want a high poly model and a low poly model, but you want them to look similar. This is how you can do it. So I'll go ahead and close out of that there. Let's take a look at the sphere once again and go through some more of the settings within the normal tag. I know this is a lot of information, so if you are sticking with me throughout this whole tutorial, that's awesome. And I'm sure this will help you in the future. This is great for being aware of for a lot of situations. So we have these options here. We have this option where we could control the normal direction even using fields, which is pretty crazy. So I'll select this box here and turn that on, and you'll see we got this new tab here called Fields. I can go ahead and drop in a linear field. And if I move this back and forth, you can see we are animating the shading on this sphere using a field. Now I know this might be new to some of you. We haven't covered fields in the past. They are part of they're more so used with the MoGraph system in a lot of cases. But you can use them with vertex maps. You can also use them with normal maps now. So you could actually animate this change in shading here. And you can, of course, scale this and such as well. So it's just interesting to know that's there. I'm going to delete that for right now. In order to show how from selected and to selected work, I thought these two cubes would be a pretty good example. So we have this one here, and you can see that this cube has hard edges and the normals are going different directions for the vertices. So this polygon has normals for its vertices going certain directions, and this one does as well. So when we select this one, we have partial vertices going around here selected. Why this matters is because it affects from selected and to selected, these options here. So if we choose from selected, it'll direct the surrounding vertices to the direction of the vertices of the polygon we have selected. So I'll choose from selected. Now they are all facing one direction from the selected vertices that were partially selected when I selected this polygon. If we were to select this polygon over here and we chose to selected, that would take the vertices of the polygon that we have selected. That means that we only have partial of the vertices selected for each one of these corners because we don't have the surrounding polygon selected. So when we choose to selected, it'll change what is selected to the surrounding normals for the vertices. So let's go ahead and click that. Sometimes it's easier to just understand by showing how these work than to verbally explain it. So you can see to selected changes the normals to look like this, and you can see how that affected the shading. You can see from selected changed the normals to look like this, and how that changed the shading. So very, very different. But that gives you an idea of how those options work. I think the most important settings to really understand is the hard and soft options, and to understand that the direction these normals are facing affects the shading relative to your light source within your scene. So I don't think it's as important to remember the from selected and to selected, but I wanted you to know what those were just so that you felt like we went through all the settings and you have a good handle of it and you aren't missing anything important. So let's go on to the next settings. And we'll go back to our tag settings. So you can see we have a few other options here. We have the option to align face to vertex normals. This will align the actual polygons to the vertex normals. And then you have the reverse here, align vertex to face normals. And you also have this option, swap normals. So sometimes when you're importing a model from another software, it could bring in a model from a different type of coordinate system that's being used within another software. So swap normals will reverse the direction of the normals so that they line up within Cinema 4D if that's a situation you run into while importing your model. So if I press this now, it completely reversed them. So it looks different, and this model is actually inside out. So I've had situations actually in the past where I've bought a model before and the normals have been inside out, and you can tell that they are when they're purple like this. So you want them to be orange. If you had this situation where you imported a model and it's all purple like this, if you select swap normals, that will fix that. So we actually need to do that for all of the polygons here since they're all going the wrong direction. So I need to select everything and then go into here and choose swap normals, and that will fix it if that kind of error comes up. And that basically covers the new settings for the phong tag and the normal tag and how to transfer your normals. So I hope you found this helpful, and I'll leave in the description below some more episodes where I went into depth on the other tools relating to normals within the mesh menu. If you are interested in learning more about normals, I will leave links to these other tools in the description below. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I go over another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D each week, and I hope you'll join me again next week. So I hope to see you then. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations.